Hello and welcome back to AP World History Modern. Today we're going to begin our first of a two-day look at Africa. And specifically today we're just going to do some overview of the major kingdoms and city-states that we interest ourselves with from 1200 to 1450, largely because of their interconnectivity with the rest of the world. And then tomorrow we'll do some skill work with that. All right, so development and some evidence. All right, so today we're going to do an overview. All right, so how and why the states of Africa developed, and kind of begin to look at some change over time as well. All right, so to begin with, let's look at our daily five. So let's take a moment and have a really look at this map. Looking at West Africa from 800 to 1500. So based on the map, which conclusion can best be drawn about this region? So go ahead and pause and start when you're ready. All right, so hopefully you got the correct answer as 3. The economy of this region was influenced by extensive trade connections. Next question. Timbuktu is known as a great center of learning and trade. You'll recognize that city from your summer assignment map. The walls of Great Zimbabwe reveal a powerful and rich society. Great Zimbabwe down in the southeast of Africa. And complex culture produces brass sculptures in Benin, so on the coast, down in the southern part of West Africa. What generalizations can be made on the basis of these statements? So go ahead and have a look and come back when you're ready. All right, so hopefully you got the correct answer, as some African societies achieve high levels of economic and cultural development. All right, next question. What is a valid conclusion that can be reached by studying this map? This is a Africa Ancient Kingdoms map. Let's go ahead and have a look at that when we come back. All right, so hopefully you got the correct answer, as Africans had centralized governments for the period 1850. In class, a few people put 4. And a really good example of an answer that is correct, that some African civilizations established trade routes to India. However, notice there is no Swahili city-states in East Africa here. All right, so that will eliminate that as your option. So using them, you got to use the map to develop your conclusions. All right, so similar kind of question. So which statement about civilizations of Africa before 1901 can best be inferred by the information on the map? So go ahead and have a look at that and come back. All right, so hopefully in coming up with your answer, you didn't really need any of these kind of bottom key stuff. You're really kind of looking at the map and thinking, like, why are these voids here? Why aren't there civilizations here, or down here, right? Or in here, right? So, and why are there civilizations here, right? So, so what you should have picked up is that these river systems are going to be where some of these are. So even without any knowledge of Africa at all, the physical features of Africa, simply seeing that these are clustered on the rivers or on the coast, is going to make for the best answer there. With some additional knowledge here, you probably would have known that this is the Sahara Desert, so that is going to kind of reinforce that correct answer. The Kalahari Desert, the Namib Desert, that there's a very dense rainforest in here. So all are all kind of pushing you to number 4. All right, our last question. Which generalization is best supported by the data from this chart? Let's go ahead and take a moment and look at this and come back. All right, so having looked at this, I guess I got to move my face. There you go. Having looked at this answer, this is a pretty long time frame of coins we're talking about here. From Hellenistic era coins like post Alexander the Great, and Roman era coins all the way to Qing Dynasty. We use the Qing spelling in our class for Qing, right? But the Ming Dynasty doesn't collapse until 1644. So the Qing Dynasty, so these are into the 1600s, right? So if you're kind of wondering on time frame on this, but so yeah, your best answer here will be 2. Right? 2 is your best possible answer. All right, so today we're looking at these kind of major kingdoms. We're just going to look at really, where they are, right? Kind of make sure you know where they are, and kind of just touch on a little bit about governance, what you need to know for comparison purposes, and maybe just make some kind of point out some monumental architecture that are associated with culture and or trade. Okay. All right. So that being said, let me open up my map. And we're going to kind of come and go from this PowerPoint. And actually, I guess what I did in class before I did anything is, so we're going to look at Mali, Hausa, Ethiopia, Swahili city-states, and Great Zimbabwe. And we're going to start with Great Zimbabwe. And the way I did this in class is, in order to kind of connect some of this stuff together, probably easiest to start with like the Bantu migration, which really does predate our class, but it does kind of give you some important contextual knowledge. So let's hit this overview really quick. So the Bantu migration is something that occurs over the course of 1,500 to 1,000 years. So we're talking about the migration of a group of people out of the Niger River Delta region, heading east, right, towards what's like Victoria, some to the south, but most to the east, and then from there, then kind of disseminating down. And I usually go over three different things that come out of the Bantu migration. One is it's a language family, right? So Bantu languages, there are a couple of hundred Bantu languages that are part of the Bantu language family. We've already talked about one in class, Swahili, which is a mixture of Bantu and Arabic, spoken on the Swahili coast. So it's a language family, similar to, if you're more familiar with Europe, like the Germanic language family, German, Dutch, English, or the Romanesque language family, so Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, French, so Bantu is a language family. The second thing we often kind of look at when we talk about Bantu is agriculture. So the Bantu people will bring with them their foods and their agricultural techniques. And because this is an agricultural migration, or agriculture is a part of this migration, you're going to see physical features impacting where that migration goes to. So, like, for example, the rainforest, one of the issues with agriculture in a rainforest is leached soil, with poor nutrients in the soil. So you're not going to see, you will see the migration kind of pushing to the north of that tropical rainforest. And also you're going to see it kind of hit a wall here in the deserts because, once again, agriculture and, in deserts in this case, is gonna impact that. So we see this migration kind of pushing to the east, and then from there to the south. Okay, right. Here's just kind of a different visual of that. All right. So, and it is kind of interesting to look at, to look at some of the impact of physical features. In class we kind of take a moment and we look at like the Chosin language. That is spoken in the Namib, Kalahari desert area here of southern Namibia. So that is the language that that survives because it doesn't see large scale Bantu migration. And then we also kind of look at some of the Bantu languages in class, right? Just kind of have a look at them. All right, so that's 2 out of the 3 so far. So I said when we talk about Bantu language, there's 3 things that we look at. One is it's a language family. Second, it's an agricultural migration. So things that impact agriculture will impact that, right? The third thing it is it's a metallurgical migration, right? So there is not evidence of advanced metallurgy taking place in this Bantu migration until they hit this kind of Lake Victoria, the kind of source of the White Nile region. And it's probably from, historical Meroe or Kush or Axum, where they pick up that advanced metallurgical knowledge. And then once they pick up that advanced metallurgical knowledge, then you're going to see archaeological evidence of ironworking wherever the Bantu people go. And of course, where do they go is what we're going to talk about first. So that is Great Zimbabwe. All right. So Great Zimbabwe. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about Great Zimbabwe real quick, or at least let's just kind of create our map, and then we'll go through and just kind of talk about their governance and as you can see right now, their monumental architecture. All right, so I'm opening up my my projector program and turning that on. Get going. All right, here we go. So you're gonna need a piece of paper, right? And like we've done before with these maps, I created a Google Classroom so that you can upload a picture of your map to it. All right, so let's do this. So a map of Africa. So let's start here. All right, I am really just kind of doing this in the most basic kind of way. All right. Keep that up to the Persian Gulf. All right. And we can draw the Anatolian Peninsula over there, and then the Iberian Peninsula here. And there's your basic map of Africa. Let's draw the island of Madagascar over here. So there's a little Madagascar over there. And I guess let's kind of start with this. Good place to start as a review. So we've already talked about Dar al-Islam. Right, so Mamluk Sultanate. Right. Mamluk Sultanate, so right around 1260, maybe 1258. 1517 when they're conquered by the Ottomans. Right? So this is kind of their area of control. Right. So let's just kind of start with them, and you also have Al-Andalus, right over there, an Islamic span through most of our first time period. All right, so let's go ahead and begin. All right, so Great Zimbabwe. All right, so Great Zimbabwe is in this region here. All right, so Great Zimbabwe. All right. Great Zimbabwe. All right. And what do you need to know about Great Zimbabwe? Let me zoom in a little bit here. All right, what do we need to know about them? One is governance. It's good to know that they are a monarchy. All right. I'm going to link a little TED Ed video onto my Google Sites page. It really covers Great Zimbabwe, very, very well. And of course, Great Zimbabwe is integrated into the Indian Ocean world, right? Because of advanced metallurgy, what we just talked about with that Bantu migration, right? So coming down from here, so gold, right? So one of the major sources of gold coming into the Indian Ocean from Africa. All right, so it's always good to be aware of, be aware of monumental architecture, right? And coming out of here is the Great Enclosure, right? The Great Enclosure and Valley Complex. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. Drag this off for a second. All right, so it looks kind of something like this. This is an artistic rendering of the Great Enclosure, right, in the kind of wider valley complex in the background there. And the actual archaeological remains are still there today in what is today Zimbabwe. So this is not something that is just we know about from oral history or anything. All right, so there you go. There's your Great Enclosure in your your valley complex. All right. So next, let's kind of move on. All right. So in this general region here, you probably remember from your summer map assignment, Mombasa. There's all kinds of city-states here. You know, Kilwa, it comes up in a document that we use. Right. And let me give you some basic facts here. So, Swahili city-states. Right, Swahili city-states. All right, so, when it comes to governance, these are city-states, as the name implies. So what does that mean? These are independent. Independent politically, right? And because, I guess, culturally, let's kind of put this down here, because culturally, we are talking about a unified cultural area. So we have language, right? That's Swahili, and that is Arabic, and Bantu. And again, I should probably draw the arrow pointing towards Swahili, not away from it. Right? All right, so these are the two languages that go into make Swahili. Right? And also culturally, by the time we get to like 1300 especially, Islam is the religion in this region. And we're going to see that reflected in our governance, right? So, we'll see like sultan often used in the language, right? So, to refer to our leaders. So we have sultans. However, merchants have up arrow influence. Right, merchants have a lot of influence, right, in these individual city-states. Of course, they all function differently, but we're just being kind of general here. All right, our next one. Right, our next area that we concern ourselves with is over here, and this is Ethiopia. Right, so Ethiopia, Ethiopia. Ethiopia. Sometimes you'll see this as Axum. Okay, just kind of referring to that older, pre our course area here. What do we need to know about Ethiopia? One is it's a monarchy. Right, it's a monarchy, and we also have Christianity. It predates. Christianity's been in this region for a very long time. All right, so specifically, by the time we get to 1200, we've really kind of moved over to Coptic Christianity, right? And I guess if we're talking about monumental architecture, up in the northern part of Ethiopia, in the Ethiopian highlands, we have the Church of St. George, right? The Church of St. George. Right. And sometimes you'll see kind of the location here, Lalibela, Labella. Okay. See that kind of reference there. And let's go ahead and draw this, but before we do, let's have a quick look at this, what this looks like. So let me get out of this full screen. Let's kind of scroll down here. So we can see the Church of St. George, right? Why is it such a, kind of well-known piece of architecture? It's literally carved into the ground, right? Into the mountainside. So you get kind of a side profile. Look at this thing here. Right, so very kind of interesting piece of architecture. Of course, we see some depictions of St. George at that site. And here's a kind of a map, topographical map of how it was designed. So this is in the highlands of northern Ethiopia. This also gives us some of our kind of more well-known terrace agriculture in Africa, right? So similar to what we see in southern China or in the Andes, right? We're also seeing terracing in Ethiopia, right? So let's go ahead and draw this, and I am definitely not an art teacher, but I really do like having you draw these things just as a way to remember them. Right, so what's kind of one way you could draw this? So you could just draw a cross and do some basic 3D techniques you learned in your art class in middle school, maybe 5th grade. Right, so something to the effect of like this. Right. And then this is carved into the ground. Right, so we kind of have a hole. Maybe that's going to widen up a little bit. And then who knows? All right, you get the idea. And there's some pretty neat little inlays on top as well. Kind of pop up that image again, just to kind of show you. So you get kind of some neat little kind of inlays on the top there. So we can go ahead and try to recreate those as well. And so once again, we do this because sometimes you're thrown questions with images, and you simply need to know that this is referring to Ethiopia. Right? St. George being patron saint, so this might kind of come in handy on a document if you can remember that. All right, so there's that. All right, so next is actually, I'm still using this. Let's turn our attention over to West Africa. All right. So there we go. Let me put my rock there to prevent that from falling. All right, so let's kind of begin with the Niger River. All right. So we have that Niger River. Let's put a couple of cities in as well, like Timbuktu. All right, Timbuktu. Coral. Hold on one second. All right, so Timbuktu. Another city you often see come up here is Gao. And then because we're doing monumental architecture, there is Jenne. Right, and that's going to be the site of where the Djinna River Mosque is. Right, so it's D-J-I-N. Right, D-J-I-N-G-U-E. A better E. There you go. R, B-E-R. Djinna River Mosque. Okay, and we'll come back and talk about that in a second. All right, so it's kind of just easier for me spatially to have that there. All right, so let's draw a couple of the kingdoms that we need to be aware of in this part of Africa. All right, so one is one that predates our course, or at least at the very beginning of our course, is Ghana. In Ghana, sometimes you'll see dates from like the 300s CE, but more generally accepted is in like the 700s through the early 1200s is Ghana. When we talk about Ghana, there's a couple things. One is it's a monarchy. All right. Another thing is, I'm just going to put little bullets here. And I'm off the map on it. All right. So monarchy, trade. All right. So when you think about West Africa and the gold and salt trade, right? This begins in Ghana, and also, the diffusion of Islam by merchants. Right? Diffusion of Islam via merchant activity. This takes place during Islam. All right, so who converts? All right, so when we talk about Islam in sub-Saharan West Africa, merchants and ruling, right, the ruling class, right, on that kind of social hierarchy, and that begins under Ghana, right? So that begins under Ghana. It begins under Ghana because of another group, and what color should I use? Let's use blue. All right, and that's another group that kind of is in this area up here, right? And this is the Amorvrid. That's ALMORAVID. So the Amorvrid are a pastoral nomadic group who connect this kind of Mediterranean world, right? Mediterranean world with the gold and salt trade going on the Niger River bend, and then eventually coming down this direction as well. You may have heard of Amorvrid, if anything, because following the by the time we get into our course in 1200, by 1200, Al-Andalus is largely a thing of the past. The Umayyad family dynasty is gone, and you may have heard of the Moors before, right? So Islamic Spain being controlled by the Moors. That's the Amorvrids, right? That's the Amorvrids, right? So these are a Berber people, right? Berber. These are a Berber people from the desert, all right? So you also have another pastoral nomadic group. And by pastoral, I'm talking about introduction to camels into West Africa, right? And that other group is known as that you sometimes see in documents. It's TUAREG, the Tuareg, right? And they'll control this kind of trade in this part, right? Kind of the more central part of that gold salt trade. All right, so yes, so that's kind of a couple of other. These are a couple of pastoral nomadic groups. It's always good to be aware of them when you're looking at this part of the history. All right, let's go green, right, for our one that really is in our time period. And this is an empire that runs the entire Ghana Empire and then expands the reach out, right? And that's referring to Mali, right? So Mali. And Mali will be another example of a monarchy, right? It is a monarchy. They will kind of put trade up arrow, right? So they will take the existing gold salt trade, let's say gold and salt. They will take that gold salt and they will intensify it, right? So intensification. And what is true about Islam is also true during Mali, right? So largely Muslims and merchant classes, and we see the beginning of Islamization. Right, the beginning of Islamization taking place at the very end of the, I guess it's towards the end of the Mali era. I guess you could make an argument that like what people like Mansa Musa does in Timbuktu will increase conversion to Islam. But true Islamization is something we're going to talk about more in the next time period when we talk about the Songhai. So in Unit 3. We'll talk about the Songhai, and that's when you see like real Islamization. The impact of Sufi missionaries in sub-Saharan West Africa. All right, our last thing that we're going to talk about today, right, is kind of northern Nigeria today, the Hausa. Right, so Hausa. Right, and what do we see here? We see 7 city-states. Right, 7 city-states, and kind of during our early, eventually you'll see you'll see Islamization, right, spreading into the Hausa kingdoms as well, or city-states as well. But we see, different kingdoms, different kings and rulers. This is it's a cultural zone. It is a cultural zone, a unified kind of cultural zone with separate political city-states. All right, so that's the basic. All right, so the last thing I want to do real quick is the Djenna Mosque, because that's another good example of a piece of monumental architecture that you really need to be familiar with. In the Djenna Mosque, right, so here's our camels. So we talked about the Amorids, right, Tuaregs. This is really dependent on the domesticated camel coming from the Arabian Peninsula across North Africa, and then eventually you see here the camel saddle. And you can see salt, right? You see the salt bricks on there as well. All right, the Djenna Mosque. So this is what it looks like. And this is actually a really good example of cultural syncretism. So we see here, a really good example of traditional kind of mud basement, with exposed timber, sub-Saharan West African architecture mixed with kind of an Andalusian-inspired mosque design, right? So we see Andalusian or Islamic Spain mixed together with more traditional elements from West Africa to give us, right, this very unique form, right? This very unique form of architecture here. So this is the Djenna Mosque, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and have you draw that. And there's when I do this in class, there's a simple little way that I have you do it. And you can just follow along, right? So it has a triple front, right? So let's just kind of draw your base and then do your triple front. You need a little bit of space between. All right. All right, so once you do that, you then connect them with your usable 5. All right. And the same is on the edges as well. All right, then you can kind of quickly do a little depth, depending on how realistic you want to make this. All right. Let's see, your depth here. And then the last thing that I do is, if you look at this, look at the actual image, right? So once you kind of go past that depth, you see those exposed timbers, right? So definitely that kind of major, well-known feature there. Let's just draw a couple exposed timbers. Right. It's page 25. And then we can kind of draw that on all the way across as well. And then you can continue this as long as you want, but at this point, I generally say you get the idea. So the Djenna Mosque. So make sure you kind of recognize this, and you'll also see the same architectural style, for tombs as well. For in later empires like the Songhai Emperor. You look at some of those Songhai Emperor tombs, and you'll see it's almost a carbon copy of this architectural style. All right, so that's the basics from today. Right, that's kind of the basics from today. So if you need to kind of go ahead and pause on this, I guess I'll zoom out and give you a big picture, and then I'll zoom in and just scoot around a little bit in case you need to get any of this. All right, so There's your kind of big picture. All right, and then I'll zoom in and just move the map around and pause for a second or two. All right, so there's your kind of your southern part of the map. All right, here's your Swahili. Here's your Ethiopia. And here's your basics of West Africa from your pastoral nomadic traders to your kingdoms of Ghana, Mali, Hausa, and then finally your Digeneruber Mosque. All right. So that's your basics from today. So if you were, if you were in class, then you probably already shown me your completed map. If you were not in class, then then go ahead and submit that. Okay. And you're welcome to kind of pause and read through this if you want. All right. So Hausa. All right, and so that's about it for today. So let's wrap up. States formed for many reasons. Same reasons, keep power. So let's make sure we can kind of make those comparisons. So tomorrow we're going to do some comparison work. All right. So, and of course, always be looking for those outside cultural influences. Right. So important in our course. All right, that is all for today. Sapriati.